Welcome everybody to Day 2's Live, Sail, Die wrap-up of the Olympic sailing, brought to you by PredictWind and B&G. And a special thank you today to Doyle Sails here in Auckland, who have allowed us to use this amazing office reception area for the video shoot. Very grateful to them. I've got again with me today Olivia Christie and Andrew Brown. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cam. Lots to talk about today from the few races happened yesterday, and a lot more racing happening today as well with a few more classes.
Yeah, really exciting day coming up. But yeah, going back to yesterday, let's again start off with the laser class and Sam Meach. Another, I guess, 2 days in a row, we can say another tough day for Sam. Did end up on a higher note, but still struggling to make any inroads into this fleet.
Yeah, the second race for me was, he finished 8th, but he was winning that race and just couldn't put it away, and beat 2 and beat 3, just going out to the left when the right was working was it was just a little bit disappointing to see, actually.
Olivia, you watched the racing yesterday. What did you think of the laser racing and how Sam was going there?
Well, it was some pretty exciting racing yesterday in terms of the laser fleet. I think Sam, as we mentioned, had a tough day, but he was definitely showing more promise in the second race again. I think we have to remember that Sam hasn't sailed in the international fleet for about a year and a half, if not more now. So he's just been training with the guys at home and over in Australia with Matt Wern and their training partners. We've seen them sailing around a bit together on the course, probably unintentionally, but it just shows that both of them probably are a bit rusty from international racing, and they've got good speed, but just need to put that fleet management, racing, tactics and strategy together. So same as last time.
Yeah, so Sam, he looked like he had some really nice downwind speed. We saw that in the race 2 yesterday, in race 3 of the regatta, where he slipped through into the lead on the first run. In the last leg of that race, he went from 14th up to 8th, which was turning that into a keeper for sure. So he's showing good speed downwind. It is upwind, and he did a bit of interview with Yachting New Zealand at the end of the day yesterday, and he knows he's not far away, but you're just struggling upwind to pick the shifts properly at this stage. And there were some massive gains to be had yesterday on that course. We saw in the first race plenty of carnage at the top mark, a lot of some circles, a capsize. Brownie, what do you put a lot of that down to?
A lot of it came down to the current and leyline proficiency. So it was just, people. We saw Robert Scheidt in that first race tacking under the group to try and make the mark, and the current was pushing them back, and it just happened to be a big pile up, and Robert, struggling with his turns, but the Swedish guy who was right up there, and he actually won the last race, having a capsize when he did his turns.
Yeah, and I think what was really interesting to me, and we talked about it a bit yesterday, is if you want to have a good regatta in these big international regattas, you have to be able to turn your bad top mark positions into keepers, and we've seen that again yesterday from the top guys. So Kontitas, Stepanovic, Robert Scheidt, they've all had pretty average top mark roundings, but have turned those races into keepers. In that first race, Scheidt ended up after his turns 31st round that top mark, turned that into a 10th.
Exactly,
really
that's
impressive.
A keeper.
Kontitas 20th round the top mark, turns it into a 7th. Where unfortunately for Sam, he rounded the top mark 18th, finished the race 19th. So he was gaining a bit downwind, losing a bit upwind. So he's got to turn that upwind around.
Yeah, exactly, and just those gains, awesome to see old Robert Scheidt, 48 years old, in beast mode upwind, just sailing the shifts well, hiking hard, hips high, going fast.
Yeah, and so Olivia, I don't know if you're a numbers geek like I am. I like looking through the numbers and sort of analysing stuff after races. In the second race yesterday, race 3, the Swedish sailor who won the race, 27th to the top mark. Condidis from Cyprus, 5th overall at the end of the race, 24th at the top mark. Stebanovic from Croatia, 3rd at the finish, 34th at the top mark. Those second beats they had, I think, generally they went pretty hard right and made some massive gains.
Yeah, and I think those numbers and even like the carnage at the top mark just shows how tight and competitive the laser fleet is, that you make a bad decision, a little mistake, and it just puts you back straight away 10, 20 boats. The top mark roundings, the bottom mark roundings, any of those you can gain or lose huge amounts of boats, and so those numbers just show how easy it is, or hard as well, to move up and down the fleet.
But it is
and
possible.
Put together a good race, but it's definitely possible to come back.
Yeah, cool. And so, the laser radials yesterday, we didn't see a lot of it on TV in New Zealand here because no Kiwis involved, so they shut that down once the lasers were done. Been a little bit of a change in the leaderboard. The Norwegian girl has moved into the lead, followed by Greece and Anne-Marie Rindom from Denmark still hanging in there. Big mover of the day, Olivia?
Looked to be Marit Baumeister. She's now made it up to 5th after a slow start yesterday. Unfortunately for Paige Rayleigh from the US, she's still had another struggle day yesterday, so she's still well down the leaderboard. I think it shows, though, just how much of a mental game the Olympics is as well, that people who stay positive and just keep chipping away will get those consistent results and move up quickly, whereas a tough day can really put someone back very quickly as well.
You can see just by looking through the scoreboard how competitive the fleet is and how tricky the conditions are. There's no one there who's had 4 top 10s.
No.
There's plenty of big scores right down the scoreline, so I think we'll see plenty of more movement in that laser radial fleet, as well as the laser fleet. I think, Condidis from Cyprus sitting in 3rd, he's the only one who has 3 single-figure races. Correct. Everyone else has a throw-out at this stage. So I think there's plenty more movement to happen there. Yeah. RSX fleet, the girls looking like the top 3 have got a little bit of a break. So we've gone France, GBR and China, with a little jump back to the rest. But again, a few ups and downs through that fleet as well. And in the men, again, it's really solid. The first few have a bit of a jump. We've got the Italian, the Swiss, and then the Dutch favourite, Karen Bedlow, who happened to have a DSQ in one of the races yesterday. The RSXs are, certainly to my surprise, and I think could be the first time ever, are having multiple protests in the fleet, which is very un-windsurfer-like.
Yeah, they're leading on the protest front. I think 6 protests, and maybe it's because it's the last ever time that the RSX is in the Olympics. It's going to windfoiling next time, but yeah, I didn't even know that the RSX sailors could fill out a protest form.
Oh, Brownie, you can't say that.
It's amazing. 6 of them.
So looking ahead to today, Brownie, what have we got weather-wise?
So if you look on PredictWind, been looking at it this morning, and all the models are lining up. The typhoon is at the closest point, and again, very much offshore breezes, northerlies, and as it dies off during the day, it's going to be 18 knots at the start of the day in Inishina on Sagami Bay, and then as it dies later in the afternoon, look for a left trend. So that'll be it. But more interestingly, the current today on the PredictWind current model is strong. So that typhoon out to sea, the ocean currents are strong, and it is coming into the Sagami Bay area. And we're going to be looking on for a little bit of side-on current today. That means that we might see some longer tacks. There'll be a longer favoured tack, and downwind we might be seeing some early jibes. Also today, though, we don't just have lasers, radials, or the boards. We've also got Josh Jr. in our fin. He's coming out to start his regatta. He's got 2 races, and we have the gold medalists and Peter Burling and Blair Toop, 3 races, and also Alex Maloney and Molly Meach doing their first 3 races as well.
Yeah, so she's a stacked day for the New Zealand fleets. You know, it looks like the lasers are going to try and squeeze in 3 races as well to make up their one from the first day.
Yeah, so that'll be a moving day for the laser fleet today, won't it?
Yeah, I think we'll have it. Well, you know, that'll be halfway through their regatta by the end of today, so that'll be a real interesting one. That current, you talk about the current, Brownie. You think after yesterday of that laser action, both the lasers and the laser radials made some mistakes over that top market. Probably a bit more research going on out in the coach boat world before racing today.
Yeah, you'd hope so. It's a bit hard for the coaches. They have to only go at 5 knots. So as soon as they get out on the course, they can't zoom around the course and measure the current. And unfortunately, we're going to talk a bit more about the B&G systems tomorrow, but there's no use of wind gear or their GPSs to measure the current. So yeah, it's a little bit more on the sailors, but that's where having the PredictWind current models, which is a new thing which is done for Sagami Bay for the Olympics, but also for the Solent. So PredictWind is introducing their current models. So anywhere where you can get a PredictWind forecast, the high res forecast, they're going to have high res current models. So looking forward to that when we can do some long distance racing in Auckland as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Olivia and Andy, for the feedback from yesterday. Really looking forward to racing today. Lot more fleet, lot more Kiwi action. Thank you again to B&G and PredictWind, and of course to Doyle's for letting us in here today, and we'll see you all tomorrow.